It was a Friday night when Lily and her friends gathered at her house for a much-anticipated sleepover. The weather outside was cold, with the wind howling through the trees, setting the perfect mood for a spooky evening. Lily, always the organizer, had decorated the living room with colorful pillows, blankets, and fairy lights. The room was cozy, but something about the flickering light made it feel strange. There was Emily, the always energetic one, Jess, the skeptic, Mia, the quiet but imaginative dreamer, and of course, Lily, the hostess. They had been planning this sleepover for weeks, eager to escape the pressures of school and enjoy a night of gossip, games, and of course, ghost stories. "We should tell ghost stories later, like the ones we used to hear when we were little," Emily suggested as she plopped down onto the couch. Lily agreed. "Definitely. But first, let's play some games. I've got Truth or Dare ready." The night began innocently enough, with laughter echoing throughout the house. They played games, watched movies, and ate way too much junk food. As midnight approached, however, an eerie stillness settled over the room. The storm outside intensified, and the wind pounded against the windows, making the girls jump every time it roared. After a few rounds of Truth or Dare, Mia brought up the topic of the house. "Do you guys know anything about the history of this place?" she asked. Lily frowned. "Not really. It was built a long time ago, but I've never heard any ghost stories about it." Jess, always skeptical, scoffed. "Lily, you're not seriously suggesting this place is haunted, are you?" "I don't know. I just feel like something's off tonight," Mia murmured, glancing around the room. The fairy lights blinked erratically, and a chill seemed to settle in the air. "You're just imagining things, Mia," Jess said, but she didn't seem entirely convinced. "Maybe," Mia said, "but there's something about this house that feels ancient, like it's been here for centuries." Lily laughed nervously. "We'll get the truth after we tell some ghost stories. That'll lighten the mood." They decided to turn off the lights and tell stories by the dim glow of the fairy lights. Each girl took turns, their voices growing more dramatic with every tale. Emily went first, telling a story about a girl who got trapped in a mirror. Jess followed with a tale about a cursed painting, while Mia's story about a haunted doll sent shivers down everyone's spine. Then it was Lily's turn. She hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to tell. But then, a thought struck her. A story about an old pajama party she had heard from her grandmother. "I'm going to tell you all the creepiest story I know," Lily said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "This happened many years ago, in a house much like this one. It was a pajama party, just like ours. 4 girls, close friends, gathered for a sleepover. They were excited, just like us, but they didn't know what awaited them that night. The others grew quiet, leaning in to listen. One of the girls had heard rumors that the house was haunted, but she brushed them off. It wasn't until late into the night that they started to feel it. The air grew heavy, and they heard strange noises, whispers, scraping sounds, something moving in the shadows. The girls thought it was just the wind, but they couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone." Lily paused, letting the silence stretch for a moment. Then, one by one, the girls began to disappear. The room felt colder. Each time they went to sleep, one of the girls was taken. Their pajamas left behind, their blankets untouched. The last girl was terrified and stayed awake all night, waiting for whatever it was to come for her. But when dawn came, she was gone, to vanished without a trace. All that was left was the faintest scent of lavender and the sound of a child's laughter echoing through the empty house. There was a long pause after Lily finished her story. The wind outside howled louder, making the house creak as if it were alive. That's creepy, Lily," Emily said, breaking the silence. "It's just a story, guys," Jess said, trying to sound brave, but there was a slight tremor in her voice. Mia, however, didn't look so sure. She was staring at the corner of the room, her eyes wide. "Guys, look," she whispered, pointing toward the doorway. The others turned, and for a moment, they all thought they saw it just out of the corner of their eyes, a shadow, long and thin, moving across the wall. "Did you see that?" Mia whispered. Lily tried to laugh it off. "It's just the wind playing tricks on us." But Jess wasn't so sure. That's not the wind." The room fell silent again. No one spoke. They all felt it now, an oppressive weight in the air, as if something was watching them. Suddenly, the light flickered and went out, plunging them into darkness. A shrill, high-pitched giggle echoed through the room, sending shivers down their spines. It was soft at first, almost like a whisper, but it grew louder, more distinct, until it filled every corner of the room. "Who's doing that?" Emily shouted, her voice shaky. "Who's messing with the lights?" But no one answered. The giggle turned into a soft, eerie voice. "I'm here," it whispered, barely audible. "I'm always here." The girls froze, eyes wide with fear. "Lily, what is that?" Mia choked out. "What's going on?" Lily's heart pounded in her chest. I don't know." "It's not me." Then, the soft giggle returned, followed by a loud bang, a heavy thud, as if something or someone was moving in the darkness. They scrambled for their phones, using the dim light of their screens to search the room. But when they looked back at the spot where the shadow had been, it was gone. Yet, the air still felt thick, oppressive, as though the space around them had come alive with something sinister. And then they saw it. On the floor, in the middle of the room, was a pile of pajamas. One set of soft, pink, frilly pajamas. They were neatly folded, as if placed there intentionally. What are those?" Jess gasped. "They weren't here before," Mia whispered. "I swear, they weren't." Suddenly, a low, raspy voice filled the room. "Join us," it croaked, the sound coming from all directions at once. It's always more fun with four. The girls screamed, and just as quickly as it had begun, the lights flickered back on. The pile of pajamas was gone. "Is this a prank?" Emily asked, looking frantic. But there was no one else in the room. Lily's hands trembled as she tried to stay calm. "There's no one here. We're alone." But Mia wasn't so sure. She pointed toward the corner, where the shadows seemed to cling to the walls like they were alive. "I don't think we are," Mia whispered, her eyes locked on the darkened corner. The giggle echoed again, and this time, they all heard Itae's soft, childlike voice, sweet and taunting. 4 girls, 4 pajamas, one more to join us. And just like that, the house went still. Lily's heart raced as she glanced at her friends, each of them looking around, wide-eyed and terrified. The air grew cold, colder than before, and the lights flickered once more. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the corner of the room. No face, just a shadowy figure standing tall, wearing a set of frilly pajamas, its head tilted in a grotesque, unnatural angle. The girls screamed and bolted for the door, but it slammed shut before they could reach it. They were trapped. Trapped in the room with the figure, who started to move toward them slowly, its giggle rising to a chilling crescendo. "We were never alone," the figure whispered, its voice sending chills down their spines. "And you will never leave." As the figure stepped closer, the last thing Lily saw was the pale, twisted face of a girl with hollow eyes, smiling and giggling in the darkness. And then, everything went silent. The next morning, Lily's parents arrived to find the house empty. The blankets were still piled up, the pajamas still neatly folded on the floor. But there was no sign of Lily or her friends. And in the corner of the room, one final giggle echoed. The moon's silver light crept through the thin curtains of Lily's bedroom, illuminating the scattered sleeping bags and piles of snacks. 5 friends, bound by their love for horror, gathered for what they thought would be a night of scary stories and giggles. But this night would be different. This night would be one they'd never forget. Lily, being the hostess, suggested they tell a story about the mysterious old house down the road, a house rumored to be haunted. The others agreed, half in excitement, half in fear. They had heard the whispers in school about the strange happenings in that house, but no one ever dared to confirm the tales. They settled into their sleeping bags, the room growing quieter as the anticipation thickened the air. The only sounds were the occasional rustling of bags and the faint creaking of the wooden floor. Lily's voice broke the silence as she began the tale. Once, there lived an old man named Mr. Hawkins who kept to himself in that decrepit house down the road. People said he dabbled in dark arts, summoning spirits and creatures not of this world. One stormy night, Mr. Hawkins disappeared, leaving behind an eerie silence and a trail of unanswered questions. As Lily wove the story, the friends listened intently, eyes wide and breaths shallow. They could almost hear the stormy winds rattling the windows, feel the cold seeping through the walls of that haunted house. The room seemed to grow colder with every word Lily spoke. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed through the room. They all jumped, their hearts racing. It took a moment for them to realize it was just a book that had fallen from the shelf. They laughed nervously, trying to shake off the unease that had settled over them. But the strange occurrences didn't stop there. As the night wore on, shadows seemed to dance on the walls, and faint whispers could be heard, as if someone or something was trying to join their gathering. The friends huddled closer together, their fear growing with each passing minute. Lily, determined to finish the story, continued. One night, a group of friends dared to enter Mr. Hawkins' house, hoping to uncover the truth. They found the house in shambles, with strange symbols etched into the walls and an overwhelming sense of dread hanging in the air. As they ventured deeper, they discovered a hidden room beneath the floorboards, filled with ancient books and strange artifacts. The friends exchanged uneasy glances, the parallels between the story and their own situation becoming too eerie to ignore. They tried to reassure themselves that it was just a story, but the tension in the room was palpable. As Lily reached the climax of her tale, the room grew even colder, and the whispers grew louder. It was as if the very house they were in had come alive, reacting to the story being told. The friends clutched their sleeping bags tightly, their knuckles white with fear. In that hidden room, the friends found a large, ornate mirror. When they looked into it, they saw not their own reflections, but the ghostly figure of Mr. Hawkins. His eyes hollow and his mouth twisted into a sinister grin. They tried to run, but the door slammed shut, trapping them inside. One by one, they were pulled into the mirror, their screams echoing through the house. Just as Lily finished the story, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. The friends screamed, their fear reaching a fever pitch. They fumbled for their flashlights, their hands trembling as they tried to find the switch. When the lights finally came back on, they were all huddled together, their eyes wide with terror. But the horror didn't end there. As they looked around the room, they noticed something strange. One of the sleeping bags was empty. Their friend Sarah, who had been with them just moments ago, was nowhere to be found. Panic set in as they called out her name, their voices trembling with fear. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. The friends were beside themselves with fear and confusion, their minds racing with thoughts of what could have happened to her. As they gathered back in the bedroom, trying to make sense of the situation, they noticed something even more chilling. A large, ornate mirror in the corner of the room, one that they were certain hadn't been there before. The friends exchanged terrified glances, their hearts pounding in their chests. They approached the mirror cautiously, their reflections staring back at them with wide, fearful eyes. As they looked closer, they noticed something even more horrifying. Sarah's ghostly figure was trapped within the mirror, her eyes hollow and her mouth twisted into a sinister grin, just like Mr. Hawkins in the story. The realization hit them like a ton of bricks. The story wasn't just a story yet, it was a warning. And now, they were living it. The friends tried to break the mirror, hoping to free Sarah, but it was no use. The glass remained intact, and Sarah's ghostly figure continued to haunt them from within. Desperate and terrified, the friends huddled together, trying to come up with a plan. But no matter what they did, they couldn't escape the feeling that they were being watched, that something sinister was lurking just beneath the surface. As the night wore on, the friends' fear grew, and their hope dwindled. They realized that they were trapped in a nightmare, one that they couldn't wake up from. And as the first light of dawn broke through the windows, they knew that their lives would never be the same again. It was a foggy, moonless night when Emily, Sarah, and Lucas gathered at Emily's house for a sleepover. The three friends had been planning this night for weeks, eagerly anticipating the chance to share ghost stories and test their bravery. Little did they know that this sleepover would become a night they would never forget. As the clock struck midnight, Emily's old grandfather clock let out a hollow chime that echoed through the dimly lit living room. The friends huddled together, blankets wrapped tightly around them, as Emily suggested they take turns telling scary stories. "I have one," Lucas began, his voice trembling slightly. "It's about the Midnight Whisperer. Legend has it that if you stay awake past midnight in this very house, you'll hear whispers in the dark. They say it's the ghost of the young girl who used to live here, and if you hear her whisper your name, you're doomed." The girls exchanged nervous glances, but they were determined to prove their courage. As Lucas finished his story, a chill ran down their spines, and the room seemed to grow colder. Suddenly, the lights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. "Maybe we should turn on more lights," Sarah suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. But Emily shook her head. "No, let's keep it spooky. It's just a power surge." The friends continued to share stories, each one more terrifying than the last. The hours passed, and the clock struck 1. The room fell silent as they all strained to listen for any sign of the Midnight Whisperer. The minutes dragged on, and just as they were about to dismiss the legend as mere superstition, a faint whisper filled the air. Emily? Emily's heart raced, her breath catching in her throat. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice shaking. Sarah and Lucas nodded, their faces pale with fear. "It's just the wind," Lucas insisted, though he didn't sound convinced. But the whisper came again, louder this time. "Emily?" Panic set in, and Emily could feel her hands trembling. "We need to leave," Sarah urged, her voice rising in fear. But Emily's feet felt glued to the floor. "No, we need to stay together," she insisted, trying to muster some courage. The whisper grew more insistent, and the friends could now hear it clearly. "Emily, come play with me." Emily's eyes widened, and she felt a cold breeze brush past her cheek. She turned to see a ghostly figure of a young girl standing in the corner of the room. Her eyes were hollow, and her pale skin glowed in the dim light. "Who are you?" Emily managed to ask, her voice barely audible. "I'm Lily," the ghost replied, her voice a haunting echo. "I used to live here. I died in my sleep, and now I'm trapped. I need someone to play with me." Sarah clutched Lucas's arm, her eyes filled with terror. "We have to help her," she whispered. "Maybe if we do, she'll go away." Emily took a deep breath, her mind racing. "How can we help you, Lily?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Lily's ghostly figure seemed to waver for a moment before she spoke again. "Find my doll. It's hidden in the attic. If you bring it to me, I'll be free." The friends exchanged nervous glances, but knew they had to help Lily. They grabbed a flashlight and made their way to the attic, the old wooden stairs creaking under their weight. The attic was filled with dusty boxes and forgotten memories, and the air was thick with the smell of mildew. They searched frantically, their hands trembling as they opened each box. Finally, Emily found a worn, raggedy doll with a cracked porcelain face. "I think this is it," she said, holding it up for the others to see. They hurried back to the living room, where Lily's ghost was waiting. Her eyes lit up when she saw the doll, and a faint smile crossed her lips. "Thank you," she whispered, reaching out to take the doll. As soon as Lily touched the doll, her figure began to fade, and the room grew warmer. "I'm free now," she said, her voice growing fainter. "Thank you for helping me." And with that, Lily disappeared, leaving the friends standing in stunned silence. The room felt lighter, and the oppressive darkness had lifted. They had survived the night and helped a lost soul find peace. As the first light of dawn broke through the windows, Emily, Sarah, and Lucas knew they would never forget the night they encountered the Midnight Whisperer. It was a sleepover that would haunt their memories forever.